Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Bitter Pill. So it's been a while since I've done a video here, so I want to try and make a few more. I've got a couple of interviews lined up and some other interesting things I wanted to talk about. So stay tuned for that. But for today, what I wanted to talk about was an issue that came up yesterday on Twitter slash X, as it's now uh, branded by Elon Musk. And that is the issue of female only chess tournaments. Now, there was a decision made by FIDE, the International Chess Federation, which is the governing body of world chess, that transgender male chess players, that is, males who say that they are women, would not be allowed to play in top level chess events. So let me just show you what this decision is here. Transgender women will be banned from competing in top level female chess tournaments while the game's governing body adjudicates whether they have an unfair advantage. Okay, now, why might there be an unfair advantage? Well, obviously, one thing that people have pointed out is that um, it's not a physical competition. So unlike say track and field or swimming or contact sports like soccer, MMA, fighting, you don't have an issue where males have a situation where males have a physical advantage as they do in most sports. So even people who agree that there should be female only spaces in sports, which, as I've talked about before on this channel, is the vast majority of people. So, uh, something like 90+% of both men and women think that at least there should be male and female only, as well as unisex bathrooms and similar figures for locker rooms and so on and so forth, and for sports that there should be female only sports. But in the case of chess, uh, there's been a lot of criticism both from the so-called trans rights activists and even from people who, generally speaking, agree that males don't belong in female spaces or sports. So let me just show you some of the discussion on this. So Owen Jones, a columnist in the UK, says this, quote unquote, anti-trans activists. Anyone who supports trans rights is a misogynist. Also anti-trans activists. We must ban trans women from women's chess tournaments because we think trans women are men and we think that women are intellectually inferior to men. A little bit of a straw man there because nobody has actually said that. Let's look at some more. Given that there's no conceivable unfair advantage whatsoever, The only possible reason for this decision to ban uh, so-called transgender women from top-level female chess tournaments is hatred and discrimination, says this person. But even among people who are, generally speaking, on board with there being female-only spaces and sports, also questioned the decision. So this person says, there's no physical advantage in chess unless you believe men are inherently more able to play than women. I spent my chess career being told women's brains were smaller than men's, and we shouldn't even be playing. This ban is ridiculous and offensive to women. Okay, well, what about that? Well, I'm a former tournament chess player myself, um, and I can tell you that hardly any women actually played tournament chess. That's even more true as you go up toward upper echelon uh, events. But you know, that doesn't mean that there's any sort of inherent uh, mental advantage or cognitive advantage in terms of the particular cognitive skills required to play chess at a high level on the part of males. But it's just a fact that far more males than females play chess in the first place, and far more males than females take it up on a very serious level and become top level players. Um, so let's take a look at how males and females compare in chess rankings. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with how chess rankings work, there's a rating system determined by a complex formula. There's both an international rating called a FIDE rating, and then various um, nations have their own system. So the United States has one, for example. So on the international scale, here's a list of the top 100 chess players in the world. So the median rating on that scale is around 2685. The highest is Magnus Carlsen in the low 2800s. He's been as high as a bit above 2850. For comparison, top computer chess programs these days have ratings of well over 3,000, as much as 3,500. So computers have long since left even the best human players in the dust. But so anyway, there you see where the middle of the pack member of the top 100 players in the world is. And if you looked through that list, you would notice that there are no women in the top 100. Well, let's go to the top 100 women. The highest ranked female chess player in the world is Yifan Hu from China. And her rating is 2628, which would put her about 120th in the world for men. Now, if you look at the middle of the pack among the top 100 women in the world, remember for men it was well, let's go back. I believe it was in the high 2600 somewhere. Yeah. Um, so for women, the top rated player is the low 2600s. The middle of the pack for top females is about 2400, as you can see there. Now, that's a pretty big gap, and there's not necessarily any indication that that's due to inherent ability. Truthfully, we really don't know for sure. Uh, we know that males and females, on average, are about equally intelligent. We can't say for a fact that specific mental abilities are the same for both sexes. Um, Inherently, we do have evidence, however, that on certain tests of cognitive skill, males do better in some areas and females do better in other areas. And the difference isn't very large, the average difference, but there are differences. And whether that applies to chess at all, we don't know. But the main thing to bear in mind is simply the fact that many more men and boys, as well, play chess than women and girls, and many more pursue it as a career or devote a huge amount of time to it, so they get really good at it. One thing that was pointed out about physical sports is that the difference between males and females, on average, in athletic ability, in terms of strength and speed and so forth, is such that even the very best women in the world, in, for example, soccer, uh, you can't beat even the best adolescent boys teams. So there have been exhibition matches between women's Olympic teams, Olympic soccer teams, and teams of 15-year-old boys, like some of the best club soccer teams in Texas, for example. One of their teams beat the U.S. women's Olympic team pretty soundly. Now, I wouldn't say that the gap between males and females is anywhere near as big as that in chess, because you have had women ranking in the top 100 chess players in the world. There was a woman who was active in chess back in the 80s to early 2000s, Susan Polgar, who was in fact one of the top 10 chess players in the world, and competed in the World Chess Championship matches. But that's very rare. But my point is that suggests that there's not a very big inherent ability gap between males and females for an activity like chess, whereas there is in soccer or track and field or swimming or that's weird. An event like, or a sport like tennis, where there's been exhibition matches between fairly low ranked, like 200th in the world or something like that, men's professional tennis players and the top women tennis players, and the man wins easily. And so it's not like that in chess. However, regardless of what the reasons are, there are nonetheless pretty big sex differences in both the number of players and the strength of the top players. So, it's been argued that this creates a need for there to be female-only tournaments, so as to provide maximum encouragement of female participation, both in general and at top levels. And one of the people who has made this argument pretty convincingly, in my opinion, is uh, Susan Polgar, who is a sister of Judith Polgar, the uh, top level women's chess player who I mentioned a few minutes ago. And Susan is also a chess grandmaster, and when she was an active professional chess player, I don't think she was in the top 100, but she was certainly a very very strong player. But anyway, um, she says this. On one hand, she says, I strongly believe that if given equal opportunities, women are just as capable in chess and many other science and technological and engineering and mathematics fields as are men. However, I still adamantly believe that there's a serious need for some girls only or women only events. And, most chess tournaments are open, people of either sex can play. Uh, but there are a few female only events, and FIDE has decided to preserve that. So Susan goes on to say, shoot, I haven't highlighted this article. I thought I had. So she starts out talking about how little participation of women and girls there was in chess, and how she created a foundation and raised some money to try to change that, and was somewhat successful in getting more females to take up chess. She says, not only do more girls participate in chess than ever before, but the level also went up dramatically. Um, Unfortunately, many young girls and their parents today do not know the history and what it took to change the chess culture in this country. She's from the United States. Even though we are in the 21st century, there is still a social stigma according to which girls are not supposed to want to become firefighters, mathematicians, engineers, or, yes, chess players, etc. Many parents do not recognize that they are inadvertently feeding into this by giving their daughters stereotypical girl toys such as Barbie dolls, makeup, and other girly toys. For those parents or teachers who believe that girls can be anything they want to be, they face an uphill battle and a lot of extra obstacles and expenses in the chess world, just as in other male dominated fields. Um, Secondly, boys and men are on average more aggressive and competitive than females. At a younger age, girls often face demeaning and insulting comments such as chess is not for girls, girls cannot play chess, you're stupid, etc. Um, and as both a former player herself and someone who's been around women's chess a lot since then, she knows what she's talking about. She knows that this happens. For the girls who survive the early difficult years and still remain in chess, things get worse during the adolescent years. An even more bigger and more dangerous issue looms larger. While 90% of the guys at most chess tournaments or in chess clubs may behave as perfect gentlemen, there is about 10% who behave very disrespectfully towards women, especially when they've had a few drinks. During my career, I had numerous occasions from personal experience where various male chess players made me feel awfully uncomfortable and very unsafe by making unsolicited and unwanted sexual advances. At times, they refused to take no for an answer. On a few occasions, I was even extremely fearful for my physical safety. Sadly, many of my female chess playing colleagues have similar stories to mine. This is why during my early years I rarely dressed up or wore makeup. I did not want to stand out and be a bigger target. even today, when women are now accepted in chess compared to when I started out in the 1970s, these problems still continue. For example, when I recently made a complaint about a certain male chess player, not only did the organizer ignore my warnings, implying that it is a non issue, but they went ahead and spent more money to promote this person. Many in the chess world know who the troublemakers who demean, insult, and abuse women are, but nothing is done about it. These are some of the main reasons why I feel it is very important for young girls as well as for women to have some female only events. This is where they do not have to deal with all of the above mentioned possible distractions and uncomfortable situations we often face in open events. Also, such all-girl events serve as a wonderful bonding experience, especially for younger girls, where they encourage each other to stay in chess instead of quitting. She says, furthermore, when I became the number one ranked female chess player in the world at age 15, some chess politicians could not accept this unprecedented success. They wanted to punish me for wanting to be as strong as the boys by competing in open tournaments with boys and men. They wanted to make an example of me to discourage others from following my footsteps. So when I became the first woman to qualify for the, quote, men's world championship cycle, it's actually just a chess championship, the male chess politicians decided to block me from competing. The official reason? Because I am not a man, so I cannot compete in a men's world championship. Later things changed, and her sister was able to compete in the world championship cycle. But when she was at a top level in the 1980s, she was blocked. Okay, let's see if there's anything else from this article. Okay. Another way of looking at this issue is to look at psychological factors that might be involved in either gender imbalance in top level chess. Now, I'm a social psychologist and I'm very familiar with this literature. Basically, there's a phenomenon called stereotype threat that rears its ugly head in many competitive situations, whether it be academics or athletics or activities like chess and so forth, where basically, in a nutshell, what's involved is that there are negative stereotypes about certain groups within society. Women, various groups of people of color, and so forth. And they supposedly don't have the ability to do this or that at a high level. And that, in turn, creates pressure on members of these minority groups, in certain situations where they underperform because it's very stressful to have people around you thinking, oh, you can't do well because you're this or you're that, or in this case, you can't play chess as well as males. Judith Polgar, like her sister Susan, believes there's no inherent limitation to women's success in chess. However, Judith's sister Susan, a former women's world champion, noted, "When men lose against me, they always have a headache. I've never beaten a healthy man." The American Bobby Fischer on whom the series of Queen's Gambit's lead character is largely based, once said women are terrible chess players. Another former world champion, Gary Kasparov, said uh, that there is real chess and women's chess. Uh, so, so this scientist says these sorts of beliefs may induce a, quote, stereotype threat that can explain part of the performance gap. Stereotype threat is where minorities underperform solely because they're aware of a stereotype that people of their group do worse. Confidence flags, interest wanes, and a vicious cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy follows. The stereotype threat effect has been observed in experiments involving women in mathematics performance, where the stereotype is that women are not as good at math as men, or girls are not as good at boys, and in studies on lower representation of women in leadership positions. Um, and researchers have applied this concept to success in chess by males versus females. So, in one study, researchers pitted male and female chess players against each other online. So, they couldn't see each other, and they could control whether or not they knew who their opponent was, as opposed to being anonymous. And they randomly assigned male and female players to play against each other, either against other members of their own sex or the opposite sex, and randomly assigned them to either play anonymously or play when their name was known, so their sex was known. And what they found was that the sexes performed equally. These were groups of males and females that had identical, more or less, average ratings. And so when identities were anonymous, males and females performed equally. But when the sex of the opponents was known, female players performed worse against male players than they did against other female players. And this psychologist, Phil Bray, conducted a follow-up study to that, where did it go? He and his colleagues found further evidence to support a stereotype threat, where they looked at 8 million rated tournament games. I assume this is face-to-face tournament games, using a data set of more than 180,000 players. And they found evidence of a stereotype threat effect for female chess players. Female players tend to perform worse against male opponents than against female opponents, even after accounting for chess strength. The performance drop is roughly equivalent to a woman giving her male opponent the advantage of the first move in every single game. So the bottom line is, even though we don't have any solid evidence at this point that there are any inherent differences in average ability in terms of the specific kinds of abilities that succeeding at chess, playing chess at a high level, requires, we do have evidence that there are factors, psychological factors, that suppress female performance in competition against males in many cases. Not always, as Judith Polgar's resounding success as a professional chess player attests. But, it does happen. And, there's the sexual harassment issue, and simply the fact that for a variety of cultural reasons, females are not as encouraged to participate in chess, just like they're not as encouraged to participate in sports or certain academic disciplines, major in math, let's say, um, compared to males, and so there are fewer of them, and um, therefore there are fewer who reach the top levels of chess. So, you know, if you allow any male who wants to say he is a woman to enter a female chess event, well, that opens the door for any strong male chess player who wants to identify as a woman and participate in women's chess tournaments. Um, I mean, think about it this way: to look at another situation. Let's say that in whatever city you live in or town you live in, there was a city chess championship, and out of the blue, Magnus Carlsen, the world chess champion, who's or I guess he's not technically champion right now, but highest rated player, who's from Norway, decides to quote unquote identify as a resident of your town and show up there to compete in your city's chess tournament. Would you consider that fair? I mean, the purpose of your event is to see who's the strongest chess player, at least over the course of that tournament, in your particular city. So it kind of defeats the purpose to let just anyone show up and play, regardless of whether they're from that city or not. And same if you're trying to decide, say that the best current women's chess player in the United States. It defeats the purpose if you allow males to play just because they identify as women. Even if they truly strongly believe that they have a quote unquote female gender identity, they're still not women. They're not female, and females have the right, just as say residents of a particular city or country or whatever have the right to hold events or competitions that are exclusively for members of their group. They don't even have to have a reason, but certainly, I've given you plenty of reasons why it makes sense to give women and girls the opportunity to compete amongst themselves, to encourage participation and build confidence and so on and so forth, in a world where, let's face it, even though it's 2023, women are still discriminated against. Women and girls are still regarded as inferior on average in certain respects, including certain kinds of intellectual pursuits such as chess. And it's just really easy for females to get discouraged or feel a pressure or whatnot when they compete against males, and they do it anyway because it's not like, say, Australian rules football or something where it's actually kind of dangerous for women and men to play together, especially at top levels, or mixed martial arts, for example. It's not like that. Women certainly can and do compete in open events where the vast majority of participants are male, and they'll continue to do so. Most chess tournaments are that way, but why can't women and girls have female-only chess events if they want to? It seems like they're entitled to that. That's their right. Okay, well, that's what I wanted to say about that. Stay tuned next time when I will be talking about this upcoming presidential election here in the United States and some thoughts I have about that. All right, see you next time.